people are coming, but those people are not the qualified standards that we need.
It's not an invasion, even though it has been labeled so.
If I understand you correctly, you are suggesting we should import more non-European immigrants.
No, I would never use the word import.
Forget what you know about the usual political debate. For the 2024 European election, we are flipping the script. Voters will be at the center of the debate, and politicians will ask the questions on topics shaping the election, like migration.
I'm Giulia. I do think that the EU is failing migrants right now. We are not supporting them as people. We are seeing them as a threat.
My name is Lukas Honemann. The EU is not failing in regards to migration at the moment. I think the EU knows that we have enough migrants that we need to integrate in our society.
Yes or no? Do you think EU countries are at maximum capacity when it comes to migration?
Migrants are, of course, have tragic backgrounds, and when debating this, we cannot think that these are just numbers on an Excel spreadsheet. They are human beings. But at the other hand, we as Germany especially face dire situations, economic degrowth, and almost half of the money we have as a federal nation goes into social systems. And we are at our maximum capacity in this regard, not starting to talk about our society.
I think that if you look at migration dynamics and trends, you find out that at least 80% of the people who flee or move from their context of origin remain in neighboring contexts. That means that only a very small portion of those fleeing the regions and countries come to Europe. It's not an invasion, even though it has been labeled so, often to elicit fear and often just before the elections. The numbers that are coming, first of all, are totally manageable if they are shared. Second, if we look at capacity, we still have capacity, not only in terms of reception centers, but also in terms of houses. And I come from a context where many apartments are empty. If we look at jobs, we have massive labor gaps in many of our societies, not only Italy, not only Germany, but across the EU. We need not only from a human perspective, but we also need more workers. There is a dropping fertility rate, the population is aging, and we have a small, manageable number of people that are willing to come to our society and help us. Where is the problem? It's not rocket science for me.
All right. First of all, I haven't talked about invasion. That's like some conspiracy kind of thing. That's not the topic today. So first one out. Second one, you were talking about we have a dire situation of people not finding enough houses, enough possibilities to live in the cities they are studying. So we have, at least in Germany, huge problems with housing. Might be better in like this more landish kind of countries. And the third thing is, yes, people are coming. But those people are not the qualified standards that we need, and education is very expensive. When I was in, I think it's called high school, I was like a substitute teacher to German courses. And I was for refugees, and I did it very happily. It was a great time and good people, but they were coming here unable to read, unable to write. And it was a huge task to get them to start learning language, and a huge task to start them to learn German. So it costs a lot of money to like make these people educated enough to get like the highly specialized jobs we have.
We don't only need the highly skilled. Many of our labor gaps are in small to medium companies, or all the jobs that the youth in Europe doesn't want to do anymore, because the conditions are very taxing and people want to do other jobs. We also need that workforce, the workforce in the fields, the workforce for the care of the elderly, the nurses often, we already take them from other contexts. So we need those people, and the fact is that if we don't include them well in a structured way, these people will arrive, but they will work with criminal networks, because if we don't offer them a way to properly learn the language, learn also how it works in our society, become just normal taxpayers as we are, contribute as they can in our societies, who's going to profit of them? For us, it's the mafia, which is already doing that.
During the last few years, we have seen migration also as a tool in the war. At the moment, for example, Russian-Finnish border is completely closed. There is permanent pressure on the Lithuanian, Latvian and Polish borders with Russia and Belarus, because Russia, together with Belarus, they are using migrants as hybrid war tool. And this is, I would say, completely different situation comparing with so-called natural immigration. So what would be your comment?
I think we have to be careful. We are not talking about something that are used as tools. We are talking about people. I've been to the places which you are mentioning, and I've seen people dying. I've seen families left in the woods, in no man's land, with no one supporting them. I've seen our NGOs not being able to provide food or healthcare there. So the fact that some dictators or some governors in some countries use people for their own interest, it is a problem. I agree with you. So probably we should use our diplomatic skills and the sanctions or whatever you guys have to convince them to change course, first of all. Second, yes, they use it in migration instrumentally, but maybe we can get better at that. We keep dealing with migration with an emergency and securitization approach instead of, for example, create limited structures, safe and legal pathways, so other people cannot use them and put them at our borders just to create fear, to which we cannot, by the way, cope well, we've seen.
If I may comment on that, yes, of course, the tragedies are real, but we cannot oversee the fact that Belarus was using migrant warfare, I would call it, in 2021. Erdogan in 2020 was using it. Morocco did use it in 2021. It's a tool for them. So we need to, as a European Union, make clear that we are not up to their games. We need to deal with these people. It's a problem that we need to talk to dictators or people who are not democratic, but for the sake of the people, we need to talk to them so we can make it as humanly as possible.
So, as you probably observed, also in Germany, also in Netherlands, in the last time you observe growth of influence of right-wing parties. Yeah. So, what are the main reasons you think why it's so?
It's a good question for me because I'm doing my PhD in extremism research. So, to make it simple, if you look at today, as we are sitting here, the German statistics on crime are being released. They are up 5%. Knife-related crimes are rising, and 41% of the crimes committed in Germany are committed by migrants. There is somewhat of a danger coming from excess migrants that we cannot integrate, but at the other hand, they are profiting of fear. So what can we do to make a solution for this? First of all, the people who are here, we need to integrate them. Second of all, we need to make clear to our people, political education, that the people who are here are not threats. And second of all, we need to address the core problem that we have unregulated migration that is too much for the civil society to take at the moment.
So do you really believe that this will be only small amount of migrants who would come to European Union?
I'm Italian. We had over 30 million expatriates, some of them in the past to Germany as guest workers. Not all of Italy moved to Germany at that point. I don't think everyone will come also because I've met many people in my work as an NGO worker and in several contexts who didn't actually want to come to Europe. They wanted to stay home. We tend to think that Europe is the best in the world, and I'm a European, I love Europe, but people have their homes, they have the communities, they have the societies, they want to stay there. They come here because they have no other way often to survive. They have to provide for their families. Some of them flee from war, from extreme poverty, from desertification and climate change, which again we are a bit complicit of, and then they are forced to come here.
All right, Giulia, if I understand you correctly, you are suggesting we should import more non-European immigrants to Europe because we need taxpayers and we have shortage on our labor market. Is this correct?
No, I would never use the word import. That's used for goods, not for people.
Let's attract these people then. Now, I want to go into the detail of this. So If we are talking about a highly skilled labor, aren't these people necessary in their countries of origin to develop these countries? And second, if we are talking about lower skilled labor, at this moment, the reality is that in my country, Belgium, 50% of non-European migrants are not working at all.
And why is that, you think?
Because they don't have the skills to work in our highly developed
Or because
economy.
they don't have access to the labor market. Because we've seen something very similar in Italy, where we have over 300,000 people that are irregular in the territory. No documents means no access to job. So we have labor gaps, but the migrants cannot fill them because we don't allow them to. And for what concerns the highly skilled and the lowly skilled, I think we should let people decide for themselves. I think all of us here, we have been migrants at some point, or we had some ancestors that moved because they wanted to move for love, for family, for work, for study. So I wouldn't put a cap. I would just create, or like ask politicians to create, it's not my job, safe and legal pathways and also agreements. We had a lot of history also in Europe. I mentioned before the guest workers from Italy to Germany. It's not the first time we deal with migration. It's just that now we are deciding not to deal with it, but just to use it as a scapegoat and to elicit fear next to elections. So that's my problem with that.
So I can understand like what you're meaning with fear and stuff, but we have what he's saying is partly right. I don't know from which party you come from. It might be like might be from the wrong direction, but what he's saying is partly right. I'm from a small district. It's called Landkreis Kassel, and we are thinking about like a work duty for migrants because we have a lot of them. I think about 60% of the migrants are on social welfare. Yes, I know it's a problem to be able to get the permission to work, but some of them simply are not interested. So we are trying like a different way. If you are here, if you are living on social welfare, then give something back to like the society. We have like a work duty, so you do easy jobs, low skill jobs, and I think that's like one way if the people are here that they have the duty to work, to give back to our social and to our social community.
I agree that some people, some migrants hosted in our societies don't want to work, as much as some Italians and some Germans don't want to work, as much as some Italians and some Germans are criminals. I do think, though, that we are risking to create pockets of vulnerabilities and marginalization, whereby by not offering a proper inclusion pathway to people, language courses and so forth, but structured inclusion pathways, we do end up preventing them from really integrating in our societies and then accessing jobs, accessing education, and so forth. And I think that's the problem, where then you have this pocket, this group of people that without a stable home and without a stable job, and that often fell prey of criminal networks, me and you in those situations, we would do the same.
It's always up to personal decisions.
For sure.
So you always have to choose between the right thing to do and to become a criminal. So there's no obligation to become criminal. I'm originally a teacher before I started my PhD, and we're lacking the resources to build good schools. We cannot like comprehend even more money into integrational measures. And it's the key problem in Europe right now is that we have so many problems: war, climate change, education, migration, and it's all pulling from all sides. So we need to prioritize, get our things in Europe straight, and then help the world.
I think I'm the only person in this room who's actually a refugee. So point one, about wanting to work. My mother was in the Netherlands for 4 years, and because our status wasn't confirmed by the Netherlands, couldn't work. 4 years she was manic depressive on the couch, wanting to work, but the legal system and the fact that the European systems are so slow did not give her the opportunity. So before we start talking about who wants to work, who doesn't want to work, if there are no clear numbers on it, let's not assume. Second, which is a question, which is about the housing crisis, obviously. A lot of the migrant population concentrates around big cities, partly because those are the cities that want to accept them. How do you kind of unite the fact that smaller cities where you could spread out, and in order to combat the housing crisis in the cities and student cities where you need housing also for students, how do you unify that with the idea that migrants are somehow making it worse when politics are also not helping with that problem?
My mother we're doing like asylum kind of things for those people, and she said there are a lot of good people, of course, even though I have cited crime statistics, of course those people want to work. We need to get them to work faster. It's an issue and we need to tackle it as Germany, as Europe, as a collective. So that's number one. Second of all, the housing problem. So we have the problem of ressentiments in some parts of Germany, in some parts of Europe. That is because, of course, the people are somewhat afraid of the other. So this is like an underlying problem that that's really hard to tackle. So education at play can also help here. But at the other side, I said it before, like there's this problem that if people come here and we have a lot of issues, a lot of problems that are happening, gang violence, etc., the people lose trust. And third of all, yes, politics at play. So we need a mix out of education, good examples, and good integration, so these people are accepted.
I think it's a matter of investment. So how do we do that? How do we manage that if we don't have money? Yes, and we will have less and less money going forward because we will have less and less taxpayers. So if we decide to prioritize migration as an investment that is valid and useful for the European Union, I think we will see the profit that comes out of that. I'm not saying, oh, let's go and import people. I'm just saying, let's create structured way so that if someone wants to come, they can do that in an orderly way, in a safe way. And once they arrive, they don't have to wait 4 years, which is a totally normal number of years to wait also in Italy.
How would you reason against the argument that migration has always been there? It's a fact of human nature, it's always in the history of mankind, but it's more visible than ever in globalization. Is it not obvious that there is no national answer to migratory flows? There is no national answer to migratory facts anymore, that it takes some further and larger scale of response, to begin with European?
First of all, yes, of course, we need European answers to that. And I never questioned that we need European answers. But you as politicians know that Europe is very heterogeneous. It's different countries who have different interests. So at the moment we have problems with the answer that is from all of Europe, because some states maybe in the east say they want zero migration. Germany, of course, says we need some people who are good and are educated. There might be some countries who say they need a lot of migration. So we have different interests and we need to find a consensus. That's democracy, finding consensus to answer that question in general.
It's good that we agree that we need probably different answers for different countries because the situation is different in the countries. So would you agree with me that we need a tool, a mechanism that allows people from third countries that seek for a job in Europe to apply to European jobs where we have shortages?
Yes, I think we need a variegated tools, a variegated toolbox. I do think we cannot put a quota on refugees because of the nature of asylum. People who come fleeing from war to our doors, we have international obligations and we have to help them, we have to host them and support them. But I do think we need to have tools to manage migration and to offer jobs. So it's not only the authorities that have to fund that. Many companies in the private sector, they want to finance these instruments because they need desperately people to work for them. And then people can travel safely and not on a dinghy, but on a flight. And then when they arrive, they have a job which is meant for them.
Yes, we need a mechanism. There's no right to migrate, but we have a right for asylum. So yes, we should prioritize those who are in need. This mechanism needs to have some sort of selection for asylum seekers, but at the same time have an eye on their qualifications.
What we're discussing at European level is, of course, also talent pool, talent partnerships, but that includes any kind of, whatever kind of cooperation with third countries. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can give a short comment also on what would be the criteria, because we cannot cooperate or ask for cooperation and then at the same time dismiss cooperation if we don't like the result.
We have seen in the past, at least from my point of view, from Italy striking deals with Libya, with Tunisia, now with Albania, there's something coming with Egypt. We have seen taxpayers' money going to fund directly some armies or unofficial detention centers, and this is a fact where people have been tortured and abused in any way. So the taxes I pay went there. And I don't know how we can sleep at night, but we try. I think something like that should not happen. I think we shouldn't strike deals with non-democratic countries, first of all. And I know it's a bit blurred what is democratic, what is not. But where we have instances of countries perpetrating abuses, discriminalization, violence, like we've seen also recently with Tunisia, when the deal was made with Tunisia, and the type of roundup we had there, where migrants were literally picked from the cities and abandoned in the desert, and we've seen people, women and kids dying there because of that, and also because of our policies, and also because of our deal. I think that should not happen. Then, of course, if we exclude that, then we have another pool of countries we can cooperate with. There are many cooperation agreements already ongoing for other issues, so I'm sure we can find a solution also there for the migration schemes.
China is doing some bad things, we'll cooperate with them. And so I would say we should cooperate with these states, even though it hurts a bit, but we'll cooperate with also other wrong states as well. So we need to put that on the same level and don't try to get with different standards.
Second question, we've discussed a lot about, of course, also of integration. Maybe you can elaborate a bit more on what would your perspective be on what should the European level do? What need the member states need to do? What should the local level do?
For what concerns what should the different levels do? I'm not a politician. I don't know. I do think, though, that we should deal with it as Europe and not as individual countries, because if we take the individual path, we don't go anywhere. We've seen also what's happening now, what has happened with the UK. The UK left the EU not only because of migration, because of many, many reasons, but they also had an issue with migration. And now that they are outside, has that been solved? Have they solved the migration issue? It's still there. So the only difference now is that the UK is alone. We don't want to be alone. We want to be together, everyone contributing with how they can. For what concerns the national level, of course, then you need specific policies. But then I think your role and of the people here is really to try and provide a collective solution that is linked to these needs, but it also brings us as a collective further.
The European Union as a whole should work together. So first of all, European level border security. Very important. European level have like a solution for people to legally migrate into Europe. European level make sure that the conditions in the countries that the people come from improve. And on the national level, of course, like make sure that the ways how the people can get into, if they get here, that they can integrate fast. And the local level, who has probably the most pressure, it's like also civil society on the local level. First of all, when Merkel was chancellor in Germany, the federal level funded like the local level. That ran out, so the local level is under big pressure at the moment. So we need some kind of relief there. And in general, like the local level, they are there for like the big part. They're doing the integration. They are doing, at least in Germany, the teaching. They are doing like the social kind of stuff. So they need support in money and manpower.
I don't see that in a continent with 460 million people, the number of arrivals are too high. And regarding asylum seekers, if they are in need of protection, fleeing war and persecution, they have to be protected, whatever their qualification is. What do you think is the qualification of those who are arriving? If they get asylum, yes or no? And what do you think are the needs we see within our member states?
What I'm trying to say is that, first of all, I agree with my counterpart here, that we don't need like only high-skilled people. And it's a fantasy that people come here and are like perfectly master degree mathematicians or something like that. And no. And I'm just reinforcing that we don't need that. But we need people who do specialized jobs. So if we, for my example, start from people who are unable to read and try to bring them to a level where they do high-skilled tasks, need to communicate, have very different kind of ways in a fast-pacing environment where something evolves quickly, then it's very hard to get them educated to that level. It takes a lot of time, and so this is a problem. At the same time, I said it, we have also manual labor who's lacking workforce, so we need to kind of find a way like to balance things out.
I also have a question to Giulia on the question of lack of European solidarity, because you're coming from a country which is a country with an external border of the European Union, and I would like to hear a bit more about what does that make with Italy's Italian society.
Indeed, the issue in Italy is quite felt by people, and we have partly a polarized society where some people want to welcome and want to help. There is a lot strong civil society part, and this is also something that characterizes Europe and that we should cherish. But I would want to stress that even though Italy geographically is the context that at the moment and probably forever will be the door to the EU, people who come to Italy come to Europe. People who manage to enter Italy either from the Central Mediterranean route or the Western Balkan route, they have crossed much worse borders than Italy, France, Italy, Austria, Italy, Switzerland. So Italy is shouldering a lot for what concerns the first entry, but the people will be an European issue, and this is another reason why we should look at migration together.
Thank you for this debate, for this remarkable debate, because you are talking about things calmly. We are all involved in asylum and migration issues, and we never have such discussions. So, does it happen for you individually, Giulia and Lukas, to be able to discuss with people having other opinions than yours, of course, but discuss it calmly, if possible, with facts?
I think it's a brilliant question, also because personally I tend to surround myself with people that more or less think like me. Probably we all do. So when I was called to do this, I found it super interesting to hear another perspective, because to me what I'm saying is not rocket science. It's not that I'm so brilliant, it's just the facts and the reality around us. So I was very interested to hear someone else coming from another European context and having a different experience from me with her, in this case, his own ideas and the type of arguments put there. We want to find a way forward. I'm not trying to establish myself over you or the opposite. We are trying to find some solutions like Europeans.
Let me tell a short story of being a teacher. When I was learning to be a teacher in Germany, studying it, I was in a class and I was discussing politics with them, and one pupil said, I don't need to discuss it. I've already made up my mind. I watched a TikTok of someone of the AfD, of the Alternative for Germany, and he pretty much said, sei schlau, wähl blau, be smart, vote blue. And key problem number one is that a lot of people don't get into discussions. Second problem is that sometimes, especially at German universities, as a student's representative, there is no reasonable debate. We in Germany have a huge wave of issues where people try to storm discussions. So the space for open discussion is, at least at universities, getting smaller. Third point is I know it's easy to say that, but we need political education more than ever. The problem is that it's easier to use fear than reasonable arguments. So this is a problem why a lot of people are not reached and sometimes not convinced of democracy.
It was very interesting, particularly because it was a lively debate between two human beings interested about the EU affairs, expressing opposed views with respect.
I actually loved the format. It's nice to get the opportunity to listen to citizens and to see how they think about these different issues. But what I appreciated most is just having a calm debate about migration. This almost never happens. It is aggressive. It's dehumanizing. It makes people feel very uncomfortable. And I feel within this format, we actually got to hear the fears people have around migration, but also the solutions.
I think this was an interesting debate of a difficult topic that we experience it across the EU. We talk about migrants often as some people that need help and whether we should help them or not. But the reality of our daily lives, and the question I ask for them, is every single time we enter a car that we order from our phone, a bus, or we buy something in the supermarket, or we go to a medical center, the people there often are migrants. They are here because they want to be here and we need them to be here. It's also for our own help. In a sense, they are helping us.
I believe actually that we should revisit what it means to be a refugee. As the world is burning, as so many places in the world become inhabitable, we should be at least open to give people protection that come from places that are unlivable.
It takes a European added value when it comes to migration and asylum, which is the most divisive issue in the European agenda, but it takes a lot of European energy and the European scale of response is absolutely essential. Take it seriously, particularly the younger generation, because Europe belongs to you and you belong to the European Union.